You're listening to the Drinks in a Movie podcast, hosted by Rudy Ruiz.
Yo, what's up, everyone? Thanks for checking out Drinks in a Movie podcast. I've got a very special episode today. This is kind of a bucket list guest. I have Luke Seerveld on, Meet the Gaffer himself. If you're into filmmaking or lighting and you're on that rabbit hole of looking up gear reviews and lighting tutorials on YouTube, this is one of the best guys in the business. So, Luke, I'm stoked to have you here with me. Thanks for joining, man.
Right on. Glad to be here.
So, I wanted to get into first. So we were just talking. I'm an aspiring cinematographer myself. I've done a few small gaffing gigs, as I had mentioned, and I'm a big collector of lighting gear and all that stuff. And, there's a big, I guess, like a saturation of a lot of YouTubers and lighting reviews and lighting tutorials all over YouTube and whatnot. And it's all very cool and very helpful. But I remember probably 4 or 5 years ago now, I came across your channel, Meet the Gaffer. And how long have you been doing it? Maybe like 7 or 8 years? I feel like it may have been fairly new when I found it.
It's probably like 2015 or something. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So I was probably a few years late to the game. But I remember coming across your channel. And I remember specifically the first video I saw was the book light, the unbleached muslin, like 8x8 to 8x8. And it was a bar, I think, like some kind of bar or distillery. Yeah. So you were going for those warm tones. And I went down the rabbit hole of your videos and I loved it because, not to throw shade at any of these other YouTubers or filmmakers, but I feel like there's a big difference between that certain crowd and then folks like you, or even Andrew Locke is another good one, where there's clearly like another level of industry professionalism, going on. So I wanted to ask, first, how did you get into the film industry as a gaffer, and is that what you had planned to do when you first started in your, I guess, filmmaking journey?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been doing this for quite a while, but so there's a lot more layers. Like these days, I think people become a gaffer much more quickly than I ever did. And I will say that in terms of like YouTube, we'll get into that more later, I'm sure, but there's a lot of good stuff out there now. I mean, when I was sort of one of the early guys talking about lighting specifically, and because there's always been some good cinematographer channels, but I was kind of early on with the lighting, and now there's so much more that's done better than what I do. So I'm kind of the old guy, but. I guess starting out, I started as like an AC on doc stuff, and then tried to be an AC in commercials. But where I was getting work was fixing gear and building cable and stuff like that. And so then I got into grip and electric, and I was doing grip and electric, both grip and electric on commercials and low budget features and movies of the week, and I liked both of them. But then I kind of found that the lighting folks were making a little bit more money because they could rent their lights, whereas the grip tended to be sort of grouped as you got all this grip gear for a lump sum. And so it's almost a lost leader, especially if you got into a van or into a truck and you were providing lighting and grip. The grip came along with the truck, so you paid a set amount for that truck, and then the lights were pay as used. So it seemed pretty obvious to me, if I wanted to make more than my day rate, and your day rate kind of caps out at a certain point, then I needed to get into gear. And for me, lighting was kind of the thing that pulled my interest. I enjoyed cameras, but lighting and knowing how to fix them, I certainly wasn't going to be fixing cameras. So I with tungsten and HMIs, it was a little bit more in my wheelhouse. So that's kind of how I started leaning towards being more of an electric and a best electric, and then bought a bunch of used tungsten units back in the I don't know, early '90s, and
Hmm.
then some HMIs, and eventually my little Toyota pickup became a 1-ton van, and then I had that for 18 years, and then I had a little stint of producing because I thought, oh, that'd be a nice progression,
Hmm.
and but I didn't have the gift of sales, so
Right.
I kind of shifted into getting a little bigger truck, so 2-ton, and that has been a really nice sweet spot. And then about that time is when I started the channel, and I had no plan of having a channel for. I was just going to make one video.
Mm.
Originally, my goal was to make videos about other people, to promote other people,
Okay.
like in other crew people. And so I pitched that to the person who published what's called the reel director here. And so I thought, like, we'll make videos for the people that pay a little amount to be listed in your book. We'll just do these really small 1-minute clips or whatever to introduce people because we're in the film industry. We should have a little film. And then he just said no, they weren't interested in that. So
Hmm.
then I made one for me. Then I made one for my best industry friend Alan Steinheimer,
Hmm.
and then it just kind of went on from there.
And are you a film school person, or did you just kind of find your way on set and learn as you went on?
Yeah, so I got a bachelor's in philosophy, as one does,
Yeah.
and and then I went. That was in Iowa, Northwest Iowa. Then there was film and video, some opportunities in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So I took a summer class in video production and then took some classes in film production at a place that's no longer around. It was called Film in the Cities, and met some great people there. But that sort of helped propel me into getting a staff job at a commercial production house in Minneapolis. So but prior to that, a friend of the family who lived in San Francisco, a sound man, Doug Dunderdale, he got me onto a doc, a TBS doc that was being shot in Minnesota about the state of Minnesota. And I was just a PA,
Hmm.
but they fired their local AC a few days in and then just elevated me to AC, taught me how to load an Aton, and uh,
Nice.
and then that kind of propelled me into some other jobs as well. So yeah,
Yeah, it's funny. I had a similar route. Like the first movie I PA'd on, it was just free work and it was reshoots for a movie that never ended up being released. But
I
since it
bet.
kept being like reshoots like every weekend and they kept adding on to it, people would fall out. And eventually that's how I started acing, I mean, and this is like DSLR, so
Yeah.
it's not like film loading Atons or anything, but AC, and then now I'm setting up lights, which was a lot of just LOL lamps,
Yep. Yep.
and I think at that time that was probably 2013. So as far as LEDs go, I think we had two of the like LED panels, and wasn't that the light panels? I think was the brand, right?
Yeah.
LIT panels. And my understanding is at that point they were the only ones that were like kind of reliable and they were super expensive, which is
Yep.
crazy to think of where we're at now with the LED technology. And now I have friends that don't even know what tungsten is, and I'm like, oh my God, wow. Crazy. But
For
yeah.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I will say that while I was still in college in Northwest Iowa, I took a semester that went to Chicago. It's called the Chicago Metro Program.
Hmm.
And the idea was that, the people from the cornfields would go to the big city and get that big city experience in business or whatever internship you could get.
Hmm.
And I came from Toronto, so I didn't need the big city thing. And I ended up being in the suburbs of Chicago, working for an independent documentary filmmaker, and uh, and he had a project that took him and us to the Dominican Republic.
Oh
So we
wow.
we we made a documentary about the Haitian cane cutters that had, made this perilous journey from Haiti into the Dominican Republic, and were kind of, growing a community there. And so
Wow.
that was fun. And that I was the loader of a Airy SR 16, and that was really hot, sweaty work in the van,
Right.
with a bag, so that was kind of my precursor to, oh, maybe I can do this. But
Hmm.
it took me a while then to actually get paid jobs, out of college.
Yeah. Wow. When you started, I'm curious because this is something I definitely have made mistakes on. Is I went the route of acquiring gear myself. So a lot of a bunch of lights. I probably have about the equivalent of a 1 ton at this point, but I never, I guess I'm just bad at business. I never played the right business moves of, actually investing in a van or a truck and playing it right. I always thought, because I wanted to be a director or at least a cinematographer myself, and I
Yeah,
felt that if I had all this gear, I could get more work. It did not work out that way at all.
yeah,
Or then I kind of became the person like the low budget, like, oh, well, Rudy will do it for this rate because he just wants to work and he's going to get in and we're going to get all this stuff for practically free. I mean,
yeah.
so when you started out, like from the business side of things, I mean, how did you navigate that? I guess when you started putting your package together and your truck and all
Sure.
that.
Yeah, it's sort of hard to take other people's way they got in, because this business
Right.
is so fractured in a way,
Yeah.
and it's different in different areas of the country, different
Hmm.
areas of the world. Plus, I was in a much different time in terms of, it was harder to get in a sense, because the barrier to entry was much higher. All the
Right.
equipment cost a lot more. So now DPs are buying the lights that we're buying as gaffers, because they're
Mm.
inexpensive enough, and they just figure, like, hey, that's a moneymaker. I'll get that. So there's some friction there sometimes,
Yeah.
but so I guess, when I started buying gear, I'd already been working as a grip or an electric for 10 years. I mean, in a sense. So my progression, I hear you when you say, you're not that much good of a business person. I didn't go to school for business.
Right.
So I was just trying to work, And so my progression to becoming a gaffer, I didn't really think that was where I was going to end up. I didn't know. I was just there to somebody wanted to hire me and give me money. That
Hmm.
was awesome. And so I was much more sort of slow and naive about it all. Now it seems like people are out of school, they get some work, they get a vehicle, they fill it slowly with used gear, and then they swap out the used gear for new gear,
Hmm.
and then their grip stuff gets a little, a better quality, and all of a sudden, that they're a full-fledged gaffer, and they've had some experience, depending on where their business is.
Right.
If you've got too much competition and everybody has the same gear,
Yeah.
that's tough. If you're in a place and you got the best gear, but you're only getting people from out of town, or you have to drive hours out
Hmm.
of town to get the work, that's another sort of difficulty. If you don't, so then, yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one, and there's no sort of one way to make it happen.
Right.
I think for me, I was fortunate in that I hit the the sort of transition from it being really difficult to get into film, to where there was a little boom time, I guess, and then I could sneak in,
Hmm.
and
Right.
yeah, I don't know. It's hard from your own perspective to figure out how that might be true in other parts of the country.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
Especially like, yeah, being out here in LA, obviously very saturated. It's like there's a ton of other people that have just as much as I do, if not more, and more
Yeah.
skilled, more time, or whatever, but it's interesting. Like I've met, a couple people like that, and I asked them, I'm like, how long ago did you start? And they're like, oh, 1 year ago. And they have all this whole fleet of stuff in their van. I'm like, wow, okay, you really played your cards right, man. I messed up. I've been at this for like over a decade now, and I didn't even come close to that. But I guess
Yeah.
it's what you want to do with it and goals and whatnot, right? Like I never set out to be, a gaffer or even a camera person specifically. I always thought I wanted to direct, and then I
Mhm.
still do. But I mean, how do you feel about, like, have you done any DP work yourself, or do you just kind of stay out of that?
Yeah, I mean the only DP work is on my channel, which
Okay,
is
yeah.
on the lame side. So, yeah, no, I when I had my little stint into producing, then it's sort of direct a little bit as well, and I've worked on theater kind of stuff, but as a director, but not the DP.
Mm,
So I just kind of always. I guess because I was always working for a DP, I didn't want to step on those toes.
mm,
It was okay because San Francisco tends to be a pretty good community in terms of helping other people advance. So it wasn't so much stepping on people's toes if you were a best electric one day and then you gaffed a lower end job the next day. That wasn't seen by the circle of people that I was in. That wasn't seen as competition so much.
hmm.
It was more like, oh, good. Now we have another person that if I've got too much work, I can hand off to them. And so that's a whole nother discussion is how sort of congenial are the people in your neighborhood, so to speak. Like if you can have a couple of people. So like I did something that was normal back when I started, which was I had one vehicle, and then often people would get a second vehicle and maybe a third vehicle.
Hmm.
I just stayed with one vehicle, and then if I had a really small job, I'd have my car, and that's still true. And so because I never got a shop, I just used my house kind of,
Right.
and I just didn't want that extra nut, and I just kept my world small.
Hmm.
And so now it's much more normal for people to group up. So you have a couple of gaffers and they make a company, and then a couple of gaffers and they have a shop, and they have maybe a couple companies, but they all kind of help each other. And so that sort of strength in numbers thing is much more the case now. And so I'm kind of a relic of the one gaffer, one truck world.
Right.
And
Gotcha.
and but that's been okay
Hmm.
because I'm okay with the small jobs. I probably missed out on bigger jobs and bigger budgets and all that kind of stuff. But that was okay for me to have normal hours and have a life outside of work.
Right. And do you do a lot of narrative work, or are you primarily more corporate documentary
Yeah.
style work at this point?
Yeah, when I started out as just a day player, a hammer on electric, then I would work on those larger long form projects, and even union stuff where, well, they tended to be union, but then I get pulled on for a couple days, when a big movie was in town, then I would day play on those things. So I have some experience in that, but not. I never gaffed a feature, for
Mhm.
instance, and and uh, and that's okay with me too. I mean, every once in a while, I think like, it'd be a nice bucket list thing, but uh, yeah, I don't feel like I missed that so much.
Right.
I tend to do the short form stuff, a day, few days, and some commercial, corporate, some sports, some doc, some you know nonprofity stuff. Yeah, yeah, I enjoy that.
And then going back to YouTube, I mean, you mentioned how it was starting off as kind of a profiles on, other filmmaker industry workers, like your friend Alan, who is in a lot of your videos. I think I was actually just watching the earlier. the lighting exteriors,
Uh-huh.
like some of the from I think just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I love that stuff. Exterior lighting is just crazy to me still. Like, but I guess at what point did it turn into, oh well, I guess I'm gonna review some gear, or even just show BTS of, hey, my book light bleached muslin with the Jolico in the back and all that. And did it blow up and get a lot of views pretty quickly, or did it take a long time? And then you just kind of notice like, oh wow, a lot of people are into this. Like, how did that, I guess, play out?
Yeah. Again, I'm not a great business person, so I've never really blown up as far as numbers go. I'm
Mhm.
never had a viral video, all those kinds of things.
Mhm.
And as you were mentioning about sort of your first LED experience, I think one of the first videos is, Alan said, yeah, you should talk about the Astra, the one by Astra,
Mhm.
because that was, ubiquitous and kind of our first foray into to LEDs of with some consistency of color and all that kind of stuff. And
Right.
it's still a good light. I mean, that one by one 6 by Astra is still does a bang up job.
Mhm.
For what it does. It's amazing how well it's held up against newer stuff that's come out. But so that happened pretty early on, just like, oh, we'll do, 10 of these. And then that just kind of see before that, I made a habit of taking pictures on set, BTS,
Mhm.
because it helped me when I was making my invoices.
Okay.
Because then I could remember, what I used, and
Mhm.
I had proof, kind of
Right.
thing. So I just kind of had that as a habit already, and then that just turned into more of it, and then video, and then I had done some editing already because I had produced some smaller things, and then that just kind of kept going. So what I never did, like Andrew Locke does so much better at, he does a much better job of, this is what I do.
Mhm.
He every once in a while he'll go out of his format, but he's reviewing a light and he takes
Right.
it from the beginning to the end, and you know what you're getting when you're watching that video, and you're getting such good quality stuff from him. And I've just been all over the map. Again, not a good business person. So I I try to lean into just the sort of regular authenticity of who I am, and you're going to get all the messiness with it. But so yes, someday I'd like to have a more cleaned up version of what I do. But for now, it's what I got.
Yeah, I mean, I do. Well, hold on, I should have been more prepared with way more. I'm just trying to keep it simple. I wonder if I can bounce a little something off the top here. I'm like way more dramatic and crazy than you. I was like, did not do a good job preparing with the sunlight, but um, yeah. I mean, with that, well, I've always liked your format of it too. And like you said, that authenticity, I think is perfect and what definitely draws me in, and obviously the knowledge, like I like that there can be a 25-minute video about lighting exteriors and just here's different options. And we're just going to try different, opal versus, soft frost and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I like even the shorter, here's a 3-minute video of here's a book light, and just for this interview setup, and this is it, and it's simple, straight to the point. There's still a lot of knowledge to gain from that. So I love that aspect of it. And it gets crazy to me. Like, I was mentioning earlier how I feel like I could never be what I imagine a true gaffer to be, where, speaking of the Andrew Locke videos, when he brings out the charts of like all the different, like when there's graphs and charts, I'm like, oh man, you lost me. That's beyond me. I'm
Yeah.
like, at a certain point, I just want to look at it and yeah, this looks good, and call it a day. Not
Well,
that that isn't, meaningful. It is, but for me, it just, yeah, I'm
yeah.
not quite there yet.
I am not either. I mean, I can read Harry Box's book, and every time I open it, I learn something new.
Mm,
And so with Andrew, I mean, his propeller spins a lot faster than mine does, and so I just appreciate his knowledge, and he and John Roche and we talk like pretty much every day,
Nice.
and so because there's all kinds of NDA stuff that you can't talk about in public, but
Mm,
it's a wonderful micro community to be in, and so but that said, I'm much more of a by feel type person,
right.
and so just from experience, you kind of sort of gather like, oh yeah, that's something that's going to work for us in this space, and we'll get a little push from there, a little something from here, something hard here, something soft
Hmm.
there. We'll cut that and keep that off of there, and I mean, so that's how I think much more than numbers. And I'm sure Andrew's like that as well, but
Hmm.
he can back it up.
Right.
Whereas I'd have I'd have difficulty with that.
And do you, I mean, I imagine at this point, it seems like you probably get sent a lot of gear. I don't know if this is like taboo to talk about, but I imagine you probably get sent stuff specifically for review, right? And does that help you in your personal, like, are you just acquiring all kinds of stuff now because of the YouTube channel? Has that been a big pro of it or?
It's been huge. I mean,
Yeah.
I think a couple things. So the YouTube channel gives you visibility outside of your small world, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
local community. So as you get older, the people that you worked with on a regular basis that you have a good rapport with, they may retire, they may move on, they may,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, transition when times are slow or whatever. So that's not a constant necessarily, but what has been a real boon for me that I didn't see ahead of time was that you have people from out of town that think they're best friends with you because they've watched your channel for a long
Right.
time, and
Yeah.
and then it's like you're fast friends on the set because
Hmm.
I don't know anything about them, but they seem
Right.
to know
That's
quite
cool.
about. So it's like you just kind of roll with it. It's like yeah,
Hmm.
and that's been a great thing because and it's also been a way for me to get to know or have contact with younger people because often you work with your peers, sort of people in your age group that you came up with in the business,
Hmm.
and so this has been a nice way to cross some of those boundaries where you just get to know younger people and work for now I'm the old guy on the set, and
Hmm.
so that's a wonderful thing. You can sort of prolong your career by having some value that you've provided, and then just getting the gear. Yeah, I'm sent gear and I get to keep it, and if I talk about it, and
Hmm.
and sometimes people just want feedback, and it's a super privilege to get gear ahead of its rollout,
Right.
and I often feel like I'm not really doing justice to it, but I try to to provide the at least first look episode when there's the rollout.
Yeah.
People like Andrew, he's got such a backlog,
Mhm.
like it's not going to come out on the rollout day,
Right.
but everybody's waiting for his
Hmm.
version because they know that it's the gold standard. So, for me, it's more of a first look. How is this in my hands? How does this
Hmm.
compare to what I already have? And um, that's a wonderful position to be in, and it wasn't something I sought. It's
Yeah.
just something that sort of came to me. So yeah.
Is there any, like, as far as kind of the new tech that's come out, let's say over just the last year, because, it's been pretty rapid when Aperture announced those, 2.5K equivalent RGB WWCOBs with like the motorized yokes and all that. I was like, oh wow, okay, we're in like a whole other plane of existence now. I mean, what as far as the new tech, have you managed to get your hands on that has become like, is any of that stuff become like an actual workhorse for you where you're like, oh yeah, this tool is on everything now and it's holding up or
Right. Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm kind of looking for is the next stage. So like with the 1200X from
hmm.
Aperture, and really before that was sort of the 900C from Evoke,
Hmm.
is that the idea of having a full color family of units,
Hmm.
and sort of in the just most recent past, from a number of manufacturers, we've had this sort of, really large output unit and a really small output unit. This, and then just kind of this sort of spotty, haphazard. Oh, let's fill in this hole. Let's
Hmm.
let's keep up with the competition in this way. And then there hasn't been sort of like a, hey, we're doing a comprehensive redo of our entire line.
Right.
That's what I'm kind of looking for. We're
Hmm.
not going to get that. It doesn't feel like it. And so we're going to continue to get this sort of haphazard, low end, high end, or
Hmm.
low output, high output
Right.
unit, and that I think is great. That's
Mm.
kind of what I'm looking for,
Yeah.
because at a certain point, I'm not going to be using units. I'm not really using on a regular basis, 4K Airy PARs and 9Ks and M90s and M40s and stuff like that. So and Airy Max is that's not just not the scale of job that I'm on.
Hmm.
And so for me, when the 2400B from Evoque came out, that was like, okay, I've never even had an M40 of my own.
Right.
Now I have a unit I can plug in the wall and almost get that kind of output. So then I have a big light. That's awesome. You know, now what I'm looking for is, let's fill in quality units that have
Hmm.
internal CRMX all the way down the line. And I think that's what's sort of coming next. So I wish that the attachments and the modifiers and all that would roll out at the same time as the unit.
Right.
The ellipsoidal adapters and all that kind
Hmm.
of stuff. I wish, those would come out when the unit comes out. But so it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about that. That's so funny how those attachments do take a while, don't they, to roll through. I mean, do you still do projects where you're leaning on tungsten or HMI fixtures, or are you pretty much all LED all the way down now? And do you ever get projects where a director or a cinematographer is like, "Hey, Luke, I want to go old school on this one. Let's just use all tungsten, gel, like whatever." Does that ever
Right.
happen? Is there anyone out there that, you know,
Oh,
wants
for
a
sure.
look like that? Really? Okay.
There is, however, that's not usually the DP I end up getting linked with. That's sort of a problem for my channel too, where
Mm,
I do a lot of the same kinds of things. I can use different units to get a similar look as what I'm used to getting, but um, I don't work on sort of larger, bigger budget spots that often,
mm-hmm.
and or features that where you have the opportunity to use larger things and have HMIs. I have gotten rid of all my HMIs,
Hmm.
and my tungsten units are stuck up in the garage, in storage kind of thing. So when you have a stage that, like a little while ago, I was going to be on a job, but I couldn't be on it. So Shane Lewis ended up gaffing it, and then he shot footage of it, and so it was a stage shoot where it was pretty much full tungsten, and it's actually quite inexpensive compared to a lot of what we're doing now.
Right.
So if you have the sort of perfect environment, tungsten is fantastic. But if you're running around doing stuff on location, and you need the power, and you want to not burn up your client, it's and now DPs are expecting to be able to look over at you, and you just can dial in a color, dial in a white or a green magenta, and dim, and it's like, that's a different world
Yeah.
from tungsten land. And we used to have to like roll in dimmer cases and
Right.
then keep those in a different room and run, extra cable so that you could keep that quiet somewhere else. And yeah,
Yeah, and then you'd have to gel it, right? Like anytime you dim it
yeah,
because it's getting warmer, so you got to keep adding.
yeah,
Yeah, that's crazy to me. I mean, do you feel, and maybe it just kind of you don't even notice it, but have you felt that change in time throughout your career? Like, does it feel when you're on set like, wow, we gained so much time? Or is the hustle and bustle and the stress and the hurry just as prevalent as it was when you did have to add scrims or add gels, or you got to climb up there and move it because it's not motorized or whatever? Or, you know, is it noticeable, or is it just like you said, kind of, well, now it's expected, so it feels just as stressful or
yeah.
whatever?
I mean, the world just fills in where you've saved time.
Yeah.
Now you just fill that in with other capabilities,
Hmm.
other requests. So, you might not have to worry about a generator and bigger cable and all the mess that brings, and distro boxes and all that stuff. You may not have to deal with that because you can just plug into the wall. But now that means you've got time for more units. You've got time to set up a wireless capability. You have time to, you know, set up CRLS. So now you got,
Right.
another kind of thing going on. And or you just have time to play. You have more iterations you can create. And we're going to take some personnel away from you. So now you're going to have, you
Right.
don't need to have a Jenny op. So that Jenny op isn't going to be a Jenny and an electric. You just don't have that person anymore. So now you're sort of losing people while you're gaining capability.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that the one thing that has stayed quite similar is exteriors, because you still have all the grip gear. The grip gear hasn't changed that much. There are some new things that you can add to your grip set of equipment, but yeah, I think I used more units now than I ever did.
Right. Wow. Now,
Yeah,
what, I mean, because now I've seen you're getting, or you've been into more of the virtual production now, the volume walls and all that. I mean, I know you've done some videos on it. Those ones I have kind of eluded me, but how is the approach to lighting change when you're in a scenario like that? That seems to be growing, and more people are adopting it in television and film and
yeah.
everything.
I think the dirty little secret with that is that in corporate land, at least,
Mhm.
corporate folks really don't want to make up their mind till the last minute or in post. And so, if you're going to really do an actual virtual reality, not virtual, but a volume set,
Mhm.
you have to create those elements ahead of time,
Right.
and then you have to have a camera that hooks up with where you are in space, and where your lens is in terms of size of your frame. And so most of the time when we're in a set like that, it's really just a glorified PowerPoint, or a video that you're going through. So it's it's getting there.
Mhm.
But the other day we were on a small stage that has a curved screen, and we were using it as mostly as you click through different animated slides basically, and then at a certain point they wanted to back it up and have some green screen. And so we were going to roll in our own green screen, and then we said, well, can't we just put green on the screen and then dial it down? And sure enough, we did. And that saved us, hanging a goalpost in a green screen.
Right.
And it was, we had the person far enough away that we didn't have a whole lot of green
Right.
spill, and we weren't seeing the floor, so we didn't see the green sheen. And so it worked out. That just shows you it's not that much an advancement
Right.
if if you're using it that way. Having a really XR type setup, that takes pre-pro, and most corporate land is not into
Yeah.
pre-pro.
Right. Dang. Well, I guess a few more topics here, and then we can start wrapping it up. I mean, I'm always curious, and when I talk to industry professionals, particularly camera lighting folks, are there any kind of go-to, you know, recipes for I guess certain looks that you tend towards? I mean, obviously, when it comes to lighting people, or places, whatever, it's not one size fits all, and you've got story to consider. But is there a kind of like a go-to set of tools that most likely this is going to work its way in some how? Like when I was younger and starting out, there was a period where I was very much into my 4 foot 4 bank Kino flow with unbleached muslin on it. And that was kind of my thing when I would shoot with my friends. That was always in play, in some form or another. So I'm just curious if there's, even still as the tools have evolved, if there's, tactics or some more kind of old school workflows you use.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a good question. I think if I was on more long form projects, then the beauty of that is that you're working towards a consistent look.
Mm,
And then, we're doing this time of day and we're using these fixtures, and then we go into different time of day, maybe same room, but we need to, pick something up. And then you may use similar fixtures or whatever, but you sort of get a language that you use over and over throughout
mhm,
the long form time period. And I would it would be cool to do some of that. But I don't know that will happen for me. But what has if because I looked at that question ahead of time and I thought, really, because I get sent so much new gear, and to keep my attention, my life interesting, if I'm lighting something that's similar to what I've lit, the day before, I like to try some
right.
different units to make that happen.
Hmm.
And so, and I think DPs enjoy that too. They're like, so what do you got? It's like, well, here's a new thing that just came out. It's the air glow, and let's try this. And they're like, oh, that's fun. We're gonna blow that up,
Right.
and so I really lean into that to try to get similar looks with different units, and just to be sort of dexterous, with that. So I guess the first thing I try to do is give the DP a key, so then they can have people sit in, and then you can start playing with the other stuff. So
Hmm.
let's where do you want the main source to come from? Let's build that first, and then we'll play. So I guess that's super basic, but and then if there's going to be movement, how do
Hmm.
we uh, work with that? So uh, yeah, sorry, I just had some stuff jump up here. So then I think, yeah, I'm not. I can't really call out
Hmm.
go-to units
Right.
at the I mean, I can at the moment, but it's just going to be sort of a point in time.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, like right now, I enjoy the air glow. I enjoy, and I'm kind of interested in trying the bigger one because I have sort of the medium-sized one right now,
Hmm.
and it's good for a 2x1. But sometimes I like to have a little more out of it, so I'll put a 3x3 unit like the Nanlux Dyno 1200C into that. So I'd like to put that same unit in the larger, to have sort of a 6 foot face. I think
Yeah.
would be cool, 6x4 kind of, and but yeah, I mean all the 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 stuff that's coming out that Nanlix has out there, that Aperture has out there, uh, the uh, the Godox F600 by. It's like a 4x4 flex light. I just keep
Hmm.
it built, and then there's the Mega Cloth from Intelitech. I like those two sort of sizes. I'm interested in the 2 foot by 4 foot size. I'd like to see that in a full color version, um, and because I think that would be nice to have, either to fly it or to just have them available as a more of a rectangle.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so I think the cob lights, that's just a gimme, because you can make it hard, you can make it soft,
Right.
and that's just great. And then as that sort of full family of units starts getting trotted out, if they can just refine the form factor and quality,
Hmm.
make sure there's internal Ceramics, make sure it works with blackout, all those things. This is, to me, it's like we're walking into the golden age of LEDs,
Right.
because they've figured out most of the color problems, and everybody's on the same page that it's got to work on a control system
Hmm.
that will work with multiple manufacturers, not just one manufacturer's app. And because
Right.
I'm going to line up seven iPhones with all the different apps,
Right.
or I'm just going to buy your manufacturer's product for all my lights. Like, I know people do that, but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway.
Because it seems like, and that's, I guess it's like what red cameras used to be, right? Where you had to buy their media and their everything. There wasn't a lot of third party. It's like, so you get locked into that kind of ecosystem. And does it seem like all these companies are very open to opening it up, like you said, app control and all that? Or as far as
There,
you know, does it feel like they're all like, nope, if you're gonna buy a Nan light, you got to stick within the world, or.
some companies are more closed than others,
Hmm.
but they're all having to, they're being pried open, and
Mm,
and they're all sort of realizing that, yeah, we got to play in the same sandbox.
right.
And I think uh, that's just a better way, and as our political system becomes more polarized, I think that's a wrong direction. I think we
Hmm.
should be working together. I think we should be more about variety,
Hmm.
and about a multiplicity of things, not just one tunnel vision. That's that's not a way to allow everybody to flourish.
Right. Yeah.
Not to
I
get
guess,
political.
yeah, no, I guess too, it's like if, all these companies want to play with the top biggest industry people, right? It's like something's got to give if you want, the next Chris Nolan movie to be rolling out with a bunch of LEDs or whatever. I don't know. But
Yeah.
um I wanted to ask, I mean, do you in your line of work, are you working with a lot of different DPs all the time, or is it like the same kind of, groups of people just because of where, your location and all that? And
Yeah. I would say I work with a lot of different folks. I work with, some of the same people for locally, but then the I get the privilege of working with a lot of people that I've never worked with before, who
Mhm.
come from out of town and need to grab some Silicon Valley, either celebrity or CEO or testimonial, and so I enjoy that, because it shakes up a little bit of your world. Everybody has a little different take on things, and
Mhm.
in my perfect world, I would retire and become like a lighting ambassador for a couple brands, and
Mhm.
travel and meet with other crews, other lighting folks in different countries and share that kind of cross pollination to
Yeah.
I think that'd be a hoot.
I guess that's got to happen for you at some point. I feel like it's got to. I mean, I guess probably the last question here to go along with the working with different DPs is I'm always interested, when I talk to different filmmakers, what are, I guess, the characteristics, and the traits that you appreciate and look for in a cinematographer that you're going to work with, and also with your crew. If you're bringing on crew members, like what are the important, traits when you're interviewing with them or you're interviewing someone?
Yeah. Well, in terms of crew folks, what I really like about the Bay Area is that we're not too big. We're actually quite a small community on some level, and the jobs that we're on are not often very large scale. So there is a sort of understanding that you need to be half decently up on both grip and electric.
Mm,
And I came up that way. I came up grip and electric for decades, and then eventually, chose. But if you have a combo truck and you have a small job, you're doing both. You're doing grip and electric, and then you're good at safety, and you're in terms of electric runs and how to hang a menace arm or whatever. So it's like I appreciate people that are cross trained,
mm,
and that's not a good plan when you're on a large job, a long
right.
form job, because you need to have that separation. But on smaller jobs where you've got, you know, 1 and 1, 2 and 2, 2 in a swing,
Hmm.
whatever, it's great to have people that are at least aware of both aspects of grip and electric. Also, because it makes for a more harmonious crew. Like, oh, you realize they need some room here to get this thing through before you start building your whatever,
Right.
and just being thoughtful
Hmm.
is is
Yeah.
comes in
Makes
handy.
sense. Yeah.
And then I think that sort of translates as well to a DP. The DPs I appreciate most are those who are thoughtful of the logistics, you know, it and balance that with the creative. Like, and then on top of that, there's the money. Often as a gaffer, you're stuck between a producer who's got an iron fist on the budget and a DP who wants to light up the neighborhood,
Right.
and then you're trying to go like, yeah, and and so it's if you have someone that realizes what the budget is, or at least, generally speaking, and so asks for a little bit more, so it hurts a bit, and then if I can play within that, where you're balancing the creative with the logistics and the money, and everybody's kind of mindful of that and isn't just pushing for this is what I want until someone says no, you know, then I don't feel like I'm caught being the no guy or going around
Right.
their back and saying, producer, can I do this or not?
Hmm.
And then they got to come and say, yeah, no, we can't. And then I'm the, I don't want to be the bad guy. I always want to be there in the service of the DP, give them a better day,
Right.
where they're not waiting on us and they feel like their desires are being lit. And yeah, it's kind of that the people that are good at juggling. I really appreciate that.
The last question, I have to ask this because hopefully I'll learn something here, but if you can recall, and it's okay if not, I mean, I guess one of the toughest lighting scenarios you've been in, a big window with the bright sun and not the right units you need for some reason, or whatever the case may be, what is the toughest moment lighting wise you can recall, and how did you overcome it?
That's a good question. Yeah, this is like a question you'd be asked for a Google interview or something.
Yeah.
And how did you overcome your worst? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I haven't thought about that too much. And I think there are some times where you feel like your back is up against the wall a bit,
Hmm.
and the important thing is to take a breath and let everything slow down for a minute, because often you're on set and you're trying to do things efficiently, quickly, and so that people aren't waiting on you, that you can get ahead, whatever it is, and then something will come down from on high and say, well, actually, we're going to look this way. And I know we didn't talk about that, or they wouldn't even say that. It was like, we're looking this way now. And you're like,
Mm.
wait, this was not discussed. This was not even in, I don't have a big light. I don't, and so
Right.
then instead of like going like, no, it's like you're always in a yes and situation, right? You're always
Hmm.
like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Uh, would it be okay? What if, could this work? And sometimes you're working with people who forget that some of the, what do you call it? The change,
Like the turnaround kind
no,
of the.
sometimes you're like, so I remember a situation where I was freaked out because I didn't have the lighting units to give
Hmm.
us the output that I was being asked to provide.
Hmm.
But when I slowed down, took a minute, and realized that they had a whole lot more to give on the lens and on the ISO and on the, it's like,
Mm.
wait, this isn't that difficult. Could we try? And so, not to give away, well, I try to make the decision process not something that's an argument,
Right.
but make it as a suggestion and here's an idea, or
Hmm.
here's a crazy thought, or what if, and then eventually, hopefully, that turns into someone saying like, oh, we could do this. And so, you've helped them come up with the idea, then it's their idea, and then they're much more committed to it than if you say, I can't do that, I can only do this, this is what we have to do.
Right.
Well, that's not a great working relationship, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you can mold your words to
Hmm.
be a helper and
Yeah.
not a herder,
Yeah.
you know,
Solution
yeah,
oriented. Yeah.
yeah. But it's not everybody's go-to way.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of sort of young DPs too that are just like, "Oh, I want to do this. Let's do this," and and you're like, "Okay, if that happens, then this happens, this happens, this happens," and they're like, "Oh, well, I don't like that." It's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, let's work that through,
Right.
and
Yeah.
sometimes, you know, with that experience you sort of you have to soften some of those rough edges, but delicately, so that everybody feels like they can go along with the new plan, the
Right.
slight shift, the
Yeah.
the little pivot.
Dang. Makes sense. All right. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Nah, solving problems is a big part of the gig for sure, and that's something that is pretty enjoyable, actually, especially when you figure it out. I do have, sorry, well, we're gonna wrap up in a moment, but one question, because your window light outside has not changed at all. I'm in here being in like a very dramatic movie, and I forgot to turn off the LED Christmas lights that are flickering. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure there's folks out there that are like, wow, aspiring cinematographer, huh? Figure it out, but whatever. But so do you have like a light? Is that some kind of light panel in that
No, I've
window
got
right there?
nothing. That's just outside, and that's I happen to be shooting on just my laptop. So
Hmm.
it's just my laptop automatic iris, and it's holding this, and then I'm getting a little bit more lit.
Hmm.
So but I have an Elgato video light that's just adding to. It's almost dark outside,
Okay,
so
yeah.
I have a little bit of bounce from an Elgato that's in the back here. That's giving me a little something here, and I think the iris is just keeping this at the same
Like exposure.
exposure
Yeah.
without us knowing it, and so there might be a little more grain in the image. But this is just a regular Mac laptop.
Yeah, wow. I was just like, how come that light's not like I'm looking at a window right here and it's definitely darker. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
but oh man, it's like I thought you had one of those custom made, like some kind of light window with the fake background screen or something.
That's nothing
Oh, that's cool.
magic. And because I've lost this light, I don't have a stronger light here anymore. At the beginning of the interview, it would
Right.
probably had more source from here. I'm
Hmm.
just getting the flat light from the front. So that I got lucky.
Yeah. Wow, awesome. Well, dang, Luke, I mean, anything you want to plug or share with us that's coming new on your channel? Anything you want to throw out before we cut the roll here?
No, I'm looking forward to a trip to China in the new
Nice.
year,
Hmm.
and so there might be some interesting stuff there. But yeah, I think there's I think it's going to be an exciting year, 2025. I mean, politically, it's going to be just something wacko,
Hmm.
but I think in terms of gear coming out, I look forward to sort of filling that full color family of
Yeah.
units that that have all the pro elements we want and are not total budget busters for folks with smaller budgets.
Yeah. Dang, right on. All right. Well, thanks a lot, man, for coming on and just, chatting about your work, your channel and all that good stuff with
Well,
me.
I just want to encourage you, in what you do, and the fact that you're editing by day and shooting by night, so to speak. Yeah, just hope those things that you keep on it, because your desire to do it will eventually, turn into good stuff. So, yeah, I hope things continue on in that area for you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it. All right.
Right
That's a
on.
wrap on this one. Yeah. Cheers.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to the Drinks in a Movie podcast. You can now find us on Instagram at Drinks in a Movie Pod, where we'll be posting photos from all the various films that we discuss. You can also email us at drinksinamoviepod@gmail.com. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and thank you for listening.